Greetings, beautiful ones. I am Miss BJ Martin, and I am filling in for our beautiful host, Marissa Blodern. And this is Sweetheart Before I Say I Do. All right, now let's get into it. I would like to bring this is my amazing, handsome co-host to the stage.
Hey.
How are you?
We're back. We've been
Yes.
gone a minute, but we're back now.
Yes, we are in the building. It's been a minute. It's been a couple of weeks.
Oh yeah. What's it been
Yeah.
about 2 or 3?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. How are you?
I am doing well and ready to go.
Yes. That's
Yep.
awesome. Yeah, we were talking about how I'm in Atlanta, and we're talking about how hot it's been. It's been like 95 degrees.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm an autumn person. I love the fall. I used to like summer, but as I get older, it's like how some people get when they get older, they don't like winter anymore.
Yes.
That's how I am with summer now.
Right.
I love the beach.
Yeah.
If I'm going to the beach, I love it. I'd rather stay in the air conditioner.
Right. Right. Well, you look well. It's good to see you. Yes, thank
And
you.
you're beautiful as always.
Well, thank you. Gratitude. I am. When I was saying, we were talking about just how we've been feeling. And I was saying that you guys, I've been in my feelings, for the past few days. And I know that we had I'm into astrology, so we had a full moon in Sagittarius, and I do know sometimes when those moons come, that that's a time for releasing, for letting it all go. If you feel like crying, cry. That's it's the time to do it. Don't hold it back, because that's healing too, healing for the soul. That's like baptism. Just healing. So yeah, I've been in my feels, but
go ahead.
Go ahead.
And the thing about it is, especially in spirituality, it is, some people they take it to a different place, but I'm thinking more or less, if you're a believer in God and you believe in the nature of God, and you believe that you have the Spirit of Christ in you, it becomes easier to get in touch with your feelings and to do what you said. Because some people, like you talked about releasing things.
Yes.
Sometimes that's the biggest problem for a lot of people, is that so much of the daily grind and emotions get pinned up in us. And that's why we have stress, and we get all kinds of things that come from stress, because we don't know how to get in touch with ourselves and our feelings and learn how to let go and release those feelings and understand. I'm a very reflective man. If something is amiss with me, one of the things that I know is very important to me, and that is to be able to have the time and space to isolate myself and commune with my own feelings and thoughts.
Yes.
Because a lot of times life just keeps going, and it will drive you right to the grave. If you don't learn how to say, I've got to take a time out and step off that road, no matter what, you have to know how to step off that road and kind of center yourself. And I call it zeroing myself.
Okay.
Because I can't, sometimes things over here get too crazy, and sometimes things over here get too crazy, and I'm being pulled this way and I'm being pulled that way. But you have to learn to say, you know what, clip, cut those ropes, those ties, step back, and I say, I got to think about me. Because a lot of times, all the stuff that goes on in this world will pull you right to the grave if you don't have the ability and the power to say, I need to step aside and kind of get myself together and get my mind together and get my emotions together. One of the things I learned in life is time is very, very important to commit to just finding out. It's like I think of it like GPS. GPS is like a thing that triangulates, meaning it takes this point, and that point to determine where you are. And sometimes that's what you have to do as a person. We're always juxtaposing ourselves against someone over here, against the people at work, and we're losing ourselves in that sense of, well, I have to do this over here and compete with this, or I have to do this over here.
Mhm.
But we never take the time to pull it back and say, where am I? And that's a very important question that a lot of times we have to ask ourselves. Where are we as this journey continues?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
sometimes you have to pull off the side of the road and just sit there for a minute. And I
Mhm.
do that often, because this place will just drive you right to the grave if you don't take time for yourself.
That's right. And if you're on a job or whatever, they will replace you.
Exactly.
Yes.
Just
So
like a machine.
yeah, and I was thinking about that. You're saying so basically you're honoring your self love. You have your self care. You honor your self care, and that's very important. And I know we're talking about releasing how being a man and today this is a Father's Day weekend. So we're gonna talk about men and fathers and all that good stuff today. But I do know that being a man, we're talking about releasing and letting go, how that's like, oh no, you're not supposed to do that, right? Like you're not human, you're not supposed to release, you're not supposed to let go, you're not supposed to do these certain things, right?
Because a lot of times the idea and notion of being able to commune with your own feelings, men do it, but they're not overt about it. A lot of times, uh, it's not seen as overtly masculine because that's not how we're groomed.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. Now, for instance, in my example, had I didn't go out with my dad. I mean, I knew who he was, lived in the same town, and though we did things together sometimes, but it was rarely. I wouldn't say that it was enough that I would consider him a part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad was like those old school roughneck Gary Cooper kind of men. They just come from a whole different cloth. Now I was raised under my mother and grandmother. Now that was both good and bad
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't have, even though I had older brothers, um, they weren't that much of an influence because there's an age gap between us enough that they were in college and they were doing their thing, trying to get their lives together. And we were so far behind, like 15, like my oldest brother, we were 15 years behind him and 11 years behind my other brother. So we weren't subject to their influence. So who was it? Like a lot of, especially in our community, mama and grandma, mama and grandma. That's who so many of our men are exposed to, that they pick up the certain characteristics. Now, some men try to buck it and they get out in the street, and you got other people out there, those roughnecks and stuff, that they begin to adopt that mentality. They begin to adopt that kind of masculinity. Well, you know, we all need as men, and I don't knock now mother or grandmother. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons why I have a pet peeve about a lot of women who say I'm his mama and his daddy. Well, to me, whenever I heard that coming from a woman, it angers me because I'm like, let me tell you something. My mother and grandmother had been everything under the sun to me, but the
Right.
only thing they couldn't do was replace my father.
Right.
So it gets very hard to realize that the effect that having a father not in your life when you're young is a big deal, because let me tell you something, as young boys, your father is the one who's going to define who you are. And I've seen it with so many of my friends
Mm-hmm.
who have had their father in their life. He is the defining rod for young men. And we have to understand, when you take a man out the house and let him be subject to women, he's missing a crucial part of his own masculinity, because just like it took mother and father to make him, it takes mother and father to nurture him. And if you take out one half of that, there's a part in that young man that's not going to be nurtured. Now,
Right.
you can leave it to other men who may teach him things, but he needs that constant subjectivity to a man. I mean, excuse me, to be subject to a man so that he can learn what it is to be a man. But that has to be something that's constant. It can't
Mm-hmm.
just be like on the weekend. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a
Mm-hmm.
very important thing that is missing, I think, in our family. And when I talked to Marty, I was telling her about how I felt that men seem to be, well, I say fathers tend to be underappreciated. You know, it's cool to say, yeah, you should have a dad for this, but usually men are looked at as simply as providers. And sometimes they'll say, well, yeah, men also bring leadership, but there's a whole slew of things that men bring, intangibles, that the only way you can attain them is you have to constantly be around them. Just
Mhm.
like when you're around your mother, there are intangibles you're going to pick up from her. But you definitely need a man to pick up those intangibles from him. And a lot of our young men are not getting that. And that's why you see this chaos you see in our society today. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's
And and I would say, and young ladies too,
yeah,
because their fathers haven't been in their lives either, or that masculine energy hadn't been present. Because I mean, I feel like sometimes the biological father might not be the best masculine, person for you, for the young man or the young lady. Sometimes the father is not the best father. So for me, I'm like anybody that just wants to, nurture and fill those shoes, fill that space, and that really has their heart in it and wants to do it. I think that if they're a good candidate for it, I support that. You know what I'm saying?
oh yeah,
So
and
some people feel like you got to have sometimes the mom and sometimes the mother and the father. Let's be realistic. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and you do the children more harm than good by staying together just for the kids, because the kids do see the dysfunction. They see what's going on. They hear the arguments. They can feel the energy. You know what I'm saying?
oh yeah, definitely.
So, but yes, I just across the board, men and women, we all need that masculine energy, that male figure in our lives to balance, talk about that, balance this thing out, right?
Exactly. And especially, I talk about boys, but women need their father for different reasons, whereas boys need their fathers for different reasons. And it's just as important to a young girl to have a father who sets the example that's going to be her benchmark in life. And you see so many women out here who want to be loved, who never were loved, never received that love from their father.
Right.
And I don't care what anybody says. It doesn't matter whether it's mother or it's father. If you take one of them out of the picture, you're removing a whole spot in their heart for some, unless there's some replacement. But most of the time,
Mhm.
a lot of times it's just single families. And I understand things happen, but
Right.
we have to have that energy from mother and father because they both give different things to one another to their children that are not replaceable. I
Mhm.
can't replace what if I had a child and mother's out the picture. I can do my best to provide and do everything I can, but I can't replace mother. And
Right.
women need to understand that there are a lot of people out there that can't replace father. You can't,
Right.
because we're more than providers.
Right. And I was one of those young ladies who father was not active in my life. He paid child support, but he was not active. And so I know what that's like, and I know what that's like not to have. It's important because that male, your dad, you want to get really be validated by him. He should be the one telling you that you are beautiful and that you are. It's different. It's different when your mom telling you that you're beautiful, because you're like, yeah, mom, you're right. Of course, you're not gonna tell me I'm unattractive because you mom. A mom will never say her child is unattractive unless she's upset with them. You know what
I
I'm
know
saying?
exactly what you're saying.
But when you hear it from the opposite sex, because that's what's important, these relationships, as you grow and you mature, relationships are important. The opposite sex is important to you. Getting that acceptance,
Hmm.
so important. So when you don't have that at home, what do you wind up doing? You wind up everywhere else, out in the streets, everywhere else, trying to get acceptance, right? Trying to.
Exactly. And that right there is common. Like it's like status quo. That's what happened. It doesn't matter what family you are. Let me ask you something. Was there ever a man who ever replaced what you didn't have from your biological father?
Mm-mm, nope.
Do you think that it affected your relationship with men?
Oh, absolutely. Because I absolutely because yeah, I was on a mission. I was trying to find my father in different men, boys, men, whatever you want to say. I was trying to find that validation. I was trying to find that acceptance through different men in my life. Yeah, and I had so and then when I did get into a relationship or something, I had trust issues.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't trust that you'll stay because my father, he wasn't there, so I don't trust that you're going to stay. It was a lot. It's a lot in the long term effect of not having a certain parent in your life. It has a long term effect on, I think, your whole life,
it
really.
does. It never it doesn't end because it was something that should have been there. And let me tell you something. That's why a lot of times men do what they do. That's why a lot of times when a man is missing his father, that's why a lot of times men act out the way they do because a lot of times men use sex as a way to medicate themselves for pain that they feel inside because a lot of times we don't know how to deal with the pain of dealing with a father because we never had a relationship with him. And a lot of times we don't even know how to have a relationship with a man. And I'm talking about in the sense that a lot of times these men are still looking for that figure. When you don't have it as a child, they're still looking for that figure, especially a lot of times. Now, for instance, I'll give you an example. Um, the woman I was dating who had a child. Now, I wasn't the first person she dated. I wasn't the second person she dated. She dated several men.
Hmm.
Now, what you have here is this young girl who has men who are coming in her life. It doesn't work out, they disappear. They come into another man comes in, it doesn't work out, he disappears. She's being subject to this sense, and I can tell you, this young girl, she had this craving so much for a father, and I could feel it when I first met her.
Hmm.
That you can just feel the craving she has because she's missing out. Now, the relationship, she had the in vitro fertilization, so she's never going to know her biological father.
Oh.
See what I'm saying? Now,
Mhm.
I got in a bit of an argument with her one time because, in a way, I felt it was unfair. I understood the fact that she wanted a child, but at the same time, not knowing who her biological father is a hard thing because you may want a child, and I felt it was selfish because I'm saying I understand you want a child, but you're making yourself sufficient for this child to bring it in the world with no other father. You don't know if you're going to be in another relationship with anybody. I mean, you may think you'll meet somebody someday, but it's going to be the same thing. And you're doing this child a disservice by doing it this way with no father in sight. So, in situations like that, there was a time I thought that I would probably be it, and I wanted it to be, but it just didn't work out. And we have to realize that sometimes these decisions that we make have long lasting effects because what's going on in our society is cause and effect. All of this madness and these broken families, how much do you think that we can continue to have these kind of families and think that, we're not going to have a dysfunctional society that begins to normalize a lot of these things? People just have babies today. I want a son, but I don't want to get married. I want a son, but I don't want to have a father. I want to have sex, but I don't want the kid. So she gets pregnant, and what does she do? She goes on to have the kid and just keep trying with somebody else, and that's just creating the madness that we're facing.
And hey Jeff. Jeff said, hey BJ Martin and Kevin Long. Nice to catch you live. Talk peace balance is so
Hey,
important.
Jeff.
Hey Jeff. Hey Jeff. Good to see you. Yeah. So yeah, it's so just big ups to those men who, and let's talk about that. Those men who are there for their children, and those who want to take care of the children, and then who get such a hard time. You have some women, it's, honestly, y'all do. Some women, they give their fathers a hard time to want to take care of their kids. So man, it's just, I don't know. It's just so much, and I've seen that, guys who want to take care of the kids, but they don't necessarily, have a good relationship with the mother. And and then you have situations where some dads, they're in. They might not necessarily be with the mother, but they are they're co-parenting. I've seen people that are co-parenting that works out very well, because at the end of the day, it's always what's best for the child.
And that's what you have to realize, that once you have a child, it's almost like you have to realize that that child is going to need everything from mother and everything from father. When I say everything, I'm talking about effort and commitment. Even if the two can't work, together and live together, the father should always be a daily part of that child's life, no matter what. I don't care if he doesn't get along with the mother. Sometimes you know how people get. They fighting with each other. Now, they play these little games, but you can't do that. You have to have the fortitude to say that I might not like this man or I might not like this woman, but our child must come first until that child gets old enough, because you want them to be more than just functional, but you want them to develop the healthy emotional attitude. And that's one of the things I think is going wrong in our society today, is you have a lot of children who, when I say unhealthy emotionally, meaning that they're deficient. There's a great deal of non-interaction that is taking place. Maybe father sees them on the weekend. Well, that's not enough. I don't care what anybody says. It's not enough just to see your kid on the weekend. My dad used to, sometimes on the weekends, we go sleep over his house, and he was an Elk, so every summer he'd go down to Convention Hall in Atlantic City and, to the Elks thing, and he would take us. But that was more or less like a matter of being able to, spend some time with his kids at the same time, killing two birds with one stone. I'm going to the convention, well, I'll just bring them. And most of the time we were down there. Me and my brother would just hang out all over the boardwalk. We'd go into the arcades and all those we run Atlantic City just by ourselves. Come in late at night and have breakfast in the morning and go our separate ways. He'd go to the casino and we'd go to the arcade.
Oh.
So it wasn't like we were spending time together. We were there with him, but it wasn't like we were spending the time with dad. We were just with him. And a lot of times we have to, there's something missing when you don't have that. But, there were times, I don't want to knock my dad. I mean, there were times where it kind of felt like, we had this, father and son thing.
Right.
But it was few and far between. And that's why I admire so many men who I see them who are so involved with their kids. It's almost like they really get into it.
Yes.
And I've always admired that, because that's what they need. They need dad to be there to be dad.
And now, when you got some men or some dads that feel like because they are the provider, then they're being an amazing dad, just providing. How do you feel about that, being a man?
I feel that providing is just one slice of the pie. I don't say, I'll say it's important. If he has a family, providing, I say, should be priority number one, and I understand that. But some men really stop there because they have this kind of convoluted notion of, I'm providing, she's supposed to do everything else. Well, maybe some households and those old fashioned households, that's how it was. If she was a housewife or something, she'd take care of the house and she'd take care of the children, and his focus was on just making sure that we have a roof over our head and food on the table and my kids are clothed and things like that. But that's all well and good. But there's a man, there are things inside of a man, components inside of a man that God put there that we're supposed to expose our children to by not only being there as a provider, but we have to show our children what it is to love, what a man's love is. Mama's always gonna love her kids, and well, for the most part, though, what I mean? There are exceptions, but mom's love and dad's love are the same, but they're different. And children have to know what it is to love a man, to love a father, to have a father love his son. And I think that so many of our men are deficient because somehow masculinity and when you don't have it, masculinity becomes misdefined because it's seen as soft, it's seen as weak, or it's seen as something that you don't want to show your vulnerability. And look, you don't have to walk around exposing feminine traits inside of yourself as a man, but at the same time, it's important that your children, it's easy for a man to love his daughter, but you have to love your son the same way. You have to show your son how to love, because he's going to learn from you as a man. Because like I said earlier, it's the man and the father who defines his son. And if he doesn't define his son, he's going to be like I was. I grew up undefined. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted from a woman. To me, it was all about just chasing, but but you don't learn. You don't learn because you're not defined. And you see what other men do and you see what this one do, especially, men who may be doing into things that are not right. And you admire that because you're looking for somebody to say, this is who you are as a man. And a lot of times you can have the wrong person define you because you're so in admiration of what you perceive him to be because of what he has and what you see him doing, that you may say, oh, this is the person I want to be like. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right man for you to be like, to mimic yourself after. And that's why it's important for fathers. They have to take that step and say that once you have a child, you have to be all in committed. Because, even the Bible tells that I can't remember what scripture it is, but if you deny your children, basically you're denying the faith. I can't remember exactly how the scripture reads, but meaning that don't come talking to me and praying to me as God. And you got children that you're not taking care of, you're not mentoring, you're not looking after. And God says that. I wish I could think of the scripture offhand, but he says it.
Right. So if Marissa was here, where's she at? She knows she.
That's right, because he would say.
Yeah, she probably would know it because I don't know it.
I bet she would. But he says, don't come talking to me and you got children that you're not taking care of. Right. How you going to be my child and you ain't taking care of your children? So I do feel that we have to I'm sorry, sometimes I just get rolling and I forget where we started when you asked me that. But because there's so much about it that bothers me. It really does. Because as a product of a single mother and grandmother, not having a father, knew where my father was, lived in the same town, but we never had this. We never had that. And even with my older brothers, even with the age difference, I knew who they were. We talked, but we never had this. Except maybe my one of my brothers. He lived in town, and we used to always go to him for things. And we kind of had that, but it still wasn't what I would have wanted it to be. And that's so important for so many of our boys. And one of the reasons why to this day I don't have children was because the fear that I felt a lot of times of putting myself in the very same position that my father was in. That I was going to go out here, have a child with a woman that maybe for now, today I like her. So, we getting it in and have a kid. Then tomorrow I don't want her. And now I'm doing the very same thing that my father did. Got a kid over on the other side of town. I'm not paying any attention to. I'm not raising him because I don't like her. And I would have made that mistake because I didn't have the intelligence at the time to realize that that's what it would have been.
Right. And I get that. And that was very responsible. It was, and very mature, but that's still messed up, because you have that thought playing in your head. I don't want to, do like my father did. I don't do like my father did. And then you wind up, not having any children yet. You understand what I'm saying? Because you got it, because you focused on that. Well, I don't want to do what he did. I don't want to do what he did,
And
still,
I see it now,
yeah, yeah,
right now, but I
yeah,
didn't see it then. I was scared. It's fear,
yeah.
you know. I
And
certainly didn't want to do that.
yeah, and that's better than having a child and not taking care of the child. So I understand that, but that's no way to grow up. It's like, it's just so much that we have to deal with. Um,
Oh yeah,
you know, So
a lot of us are in pain because in it's what I call subconscious pain because we learn to be functional. We
mhm,
learn to just keep moving forward. But a
right.
lot of times, what's in here, there's a lot of things that just get buried up and buried and buried and buried, and
Hmm.
we never really deal with it. There were issues that my oldest brother had that he was going through even well into his 60s. There were things that happened as a child that he never dealt with, and it just uh, it just never got dealt with. And because he went on to be a USD, what do you call it, United States District Attorney, and there were things that never got dealt with because he was so busy in school and in his job, especially on his job. But
Right.
time just kept going, and he
Right.
kept doing it, but never got dealt with. We're like sponges. Once that stuff goes in, unless you squeeze that sponge, it's gonna stay there.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yep.
And I know for me, I healed my relationship with me and my dad. We are very close, very, very close now. But look, I'm almost 50. You know what I'm saying? So it took a while, for me to get in that space of wanting to, uh, you know, reconcile and heal that relationship with my dad. But I want to say at 40. At 40, it's that turning point in our lives. It usually hits at 40. Earlier for some, for me at 40, it was like, okay, you need to reach out to your dad because you don't, I didn't never, my mom, and I love my mom. She never said anything bad about him. Like never. I've mentioned this before, but she didn't say anything good either. Like she didn't say anything. You know what I'm saying? So I commend her for that because sometimes, kids, they hear their moms talking about their dads and they get, now it's playing this same, soap opera playing in their head every day. They're hearing it. He ain't no good. He ain't this and that. My mom didn't do that. So I didn't have that. I didn't have those thoughts about my dad, but I didn't know what to think because I didn't hear anything. So I was left up, a teenager left at an early age to try to come up with my own conclusion about what might have happened, what probably happened. Never really got an answer. You're young. You're like, well, what happened? I'm not thinking about that. I'm trying to live and get through school. It's enough being a teenager and this and that and the other growing up. So yeah, eventually, yeah, I finally got to the point to where I was ready. I was ready, and so we talked and cried and just all that good stuff. And I will say, if you if you can, if your father is still here, still alive, and if you have the opportunity to heal the relationship, if you can, do it, because it has definitely changed. um, it's a life changer, even at that age. You're not too late to become a better person. You're not too late. It's not too late for you to do that inner work. It's not too late for you to heal. You can still do it. Once he and I got really close, like in my life, it did change. I actually felt more that balance that I needed, and I actually the relationships with men in my life, have improved. So it's worth it. And now, if you're in a situation where you had, those deep, dark, wounding situations with fathers, sometimes you don't want to go in that space, but you can always, journal about that kind of stuff. And there are other ways you can deal with it. But if you can, if it's just a type of situation where you kind of just wasn't there, you really don't know what happened, um, do it, because it was worth it for me.
And let me tell you, and I'm glad to hear that you were able to establish that,
Mhm.
and I'm glad that there was something in you that said that I wanted to reach out to him. Now, unfortunately, the problem with a lot of boys and men, and we are not socialized to be emotional in that way, and
Okay.
it's unfortunate for us because as much as I needed my dad and
Mhm.
wanted my dad, there was nothing in me that said, well, I'm gonna reach out to him.
You
Um,
wanted him to reach out to you? I mean, do you felt like the son, like he the oldest, he's the dad, he should be reaching out to me?
exactly, and that's how we, a lot of times as men, are,
Mm,
because we don't want to be the first one to take that step emotionally in order
mm.
to approach a subject that is emotional. To
That is so interesting, Kevin.
it is,
Yeah.
because that's how we feel. And
Hmm.
that's why a lot of times you see these men out here, even, I mean, even when the father may try, you watch a son and a father that don't have a relationship and they're trying to work it out. Watch how awkward both of them look, because we're just not socialized that way. And a lot
No,
of
we need to
times
change that. That needs to be changed.
it does, because if we don't start having our men, again, it goes back to what I was saying about showing our young boys. They have to learn how a father's love feels. They have to learn how a father's love looks, and they have to be subject to experience what it is to have a father who loves you just as deeply as a mother. And a lot of times we as men just do not go in that zone because we feel it's not masculine. And look, you can be masculine and still show your son love. I'm sure that there are men out there who are like that. It's just that it hasn't been my experience. But this is a big world. There are people everywhere. But there are men out there who take the time to develop their children, and it's more than just being dad who takes them to sporting events and stuff like that. You have to have those intimate moments where father and son talk, where father and son go back and forth, where a son feels comfortable to come to. I remember when I think I was in fifth grade, and it might have been fourth grade, but I can't remember. But there was a girl in the class who used the word pu, you know,
Hmm.
and I didn't know what it was. And I came home, and I asked my dad. I said, "Dad, what is?" And I will never forget the way he just started laughing. He started rolling. But you know what? When I walked away from the conversation, I walked away clueless. I didn't know.
Mm.
He gave me a basic, it's when a, and I just walked away like, okay,
Like, geez, dang, that didn't help me.
exactly. But there was no conversation. There was no in-depth explanation. There was nothing that he said to me that said, you know what, my son has a very important question.
Right.
He didn't recognize it as that, you know? So, we do like a lot of men. We walk away clueless. We learn from our friends. We learn from the street. So after a while, what does a woman become? She just becomes a piece of, and we just having fun with it. I'm not, it's like there's no commitment. And we learn all of these bad habits because we don't have the kind of in-depth conversation, not just about sex, but the kind of relationship that a father can teach a son. This is how you should be. And he should have that kind of relationship with the child's mother, so the child can see it and understand and say, that's how I want to be like my dad. And that's, again, goes back to what I said. It's father who defines the son, because he's always going to be looking at his father and seeing what his father does, seeing what his father says, seeing how his father acts under every situation. He's like a little tape recorder watching his dad, because I've seen so many men who have had their father in their life turn out just like their dads, just like them, because that's who they're learning from. That's who defined them. And when we don't have our dads, we walk around like I was one of them, undefined, That's not a good thing.
Right. Okay, you guys, we're going to pause for the calls. We're going to take a commercial break, grab you some water right quick. We'll be right back. All right.
Yeah.
Water.
On it magazine.
Awesome. Yes. And I designed that commercial. Thank you so much. I designed that. Yes, Ms. BJ Martin. I do. This is not a cheap plug, but it's a plug for me. I do. I like to help businesses. And you need a commercial. People need to see what you're doing. So I do make commercials for people's businesses. That's another thing that I do, and I love doing it. It's important to have that, that promotion, those promotional items when you have a business. Now today, on Facebook, not YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere, everybody wants to watch reels. Reels are important. Those few second videos. So it don't hurt to have you one for your business. We don't all have to be out here jumping around, dancing. You need to have a real video, promotional video for your business. So yeah. So yeah, so we are back. We are back. And Kev, we were supposed to be talking about, because it's Father's Day weekend, we're supposed to be talking about what it is to be a king. But we are 43 minutes in. Wow, that was great. I had no idea that discussion was so
it's a deep subject. It goes deep, and
yes.
It's a broad subject, because we want our fathers to truly be kings. And what it is to be a king is more than just being a male who is the head of his kingdom. It requires a whole lot. A king has to be wise. A king has to be compassionate. A king has to have the understanding of when discipline is necessary and when you can hold off. It requires a great deal to be a king. Now, we walk around all the time calling each other kings and blah, blah, blah. But a lot of times we have to be able to understand truly what that definition is and work and strive to fill that crown. If you're going to put it on your head, realize the size of your kingdom, when you put that crown on, you have to fill out the entire kingdom in every aspect that you can think of, and even what you can't think of. You have to prepare yourself and learn how to fill the position of a king, and it's big. It's
Because
big.
that's what I was thinking too. I'm like, people want everybody wants to be, king. And like, do we really know what a king is? Do we really know the duties and responsibilities of a king? Do we know? I can imagine there are many sacrifices that the king has to make for the kingdom. Do we really know? To be a king of a kingdom, do we know what it really takes? There may be some things that the king does that you might not even have the heart to do. Um, so do we really know, what it is to be a king? You know?
I think one of the key words you used, sacrifice, is number one on the list
Mm-hmm.
of being a king. See, a lot of times men are obsessed with the power that comes with certain positions because
Mm-hmm.
that's how men are. We are power junkies. We love that power, that authority to be able to have my word say this and have it happen. But we have to realize that even before, even if you look at Jesus himself, what was it? God himself who came in that form. Sacrifice. Jesus was the sacrifice for humanity. He came down here, walked this earth, and when he walked this earth, he was setting the example of what he expects of us. That was a sacrifice. Sure, he had power, but he didn't come here in his power. He came here in his sacrifice. And if you're going to be a king, understand that. You have to come with that notion in mind that if I'm going to have children and I'm going to take a wife and I'm going to build a world for us, then I have to understand first priority is sacrifice. And to me, that's priority number one. If you say you want to be a king, you have to understand and learn how to sacrifice for your kingdom because that's what you're going to be expected to do. And that's what a lot of them don't. They just like the power part of it. But
Mm-hmm.
the sacrifice, you know, it just doesn't come. It has to be number one. It's
Mm-hmm.
not easy. That's why I say it's not easy to be a king because,
Right.
you know, just
Mm-hmm.
like with a husband, if you take a wife, you're going to have to. I always look at habit. If a man is going to take a wife, he has to look at it like this: she's here to serve me, I'm here to serve her. Her body is mine, my body is hers. It's almost like everything that I am is in her hands. Everything that she is in my hands. That's how we serve one another
Mm-hmm.
because I'm making that sacrifice for her. That's where, when I look back on some of my relationships where I made mistakes because I was unwilling to do that because I didn't have the intelligence at the time to understand what it really took. And I realized that it's about my sacrifice for her. Jesus sacrificed for us, my sacrifice is for her sacrifice is for me. And a lot of people have to learn how to step in those shoes if they want to be kings and queens
Mm-hmm.
because that's all it really comes down to. It's about a sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know,
Yeah. And hey, some people are just meant to be knights. I think some people are just, and I mean that's okay. Some people are just meant to be pawns. I think that like you said, there, there's a lot that goes with that to be a king. And I think a lot of times we have no idea, um, what that entails. So and it's okay, stay in your lane, know your position. Don't be acting like you're a king and if you're not, and I think and I know there's some programs out here, I'm sure, Kevin, where you got maybe some king training, right? Some kings in training. I think we all can use a little bit of training, before we try
yeah,
to step into these situations, because even on a job, right, you're gonna have some
yeah.
training. you get hired, but you got to get trained to do the job properly, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And let me tell you something. And for I think about how many years, if I would have just known back then what I know now, because sometimes age will teach you what you need to know. You just have to get older in order to put away a lot of the foolishness that when you're young and ignorant, that you, as you get older, you begin to see. And I say with age comes, well, for most people, I would think that as you get older, you get more clarity in how you look at life and how you look at relationships. Sometimes I look back at relationships. There was a time where I thought, man, I'm such a nice guy. I'm such a good dude. But
Mhm.
relationships will expose you to yourself in a way that you can't see. And I realized, man, that I had a great deal of flaws, and I began to understand why I had those flaws because I didn't have the proper training. And
Mhm.
our young men need manhood training to
Mhm.
understand what it is, and the only one that's going to be the best teacher for them is either their father or consequence. And unfortunately, too many of our men are learning about consequence.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm. Yes, and that's a beautiful thing, Kevin, that you took the time to sit down and reflect on your life and on those past relationships, because relationships are so important. They are. They
hmm
are so important, to because they show you, they reflect who you are, and they will show you things that you need to work on. They'll bring up all kinds of turmoil and bring up all kinds. If you got stuff that's down in there, like you talk about how people take their broom and just sweep the dirt on top of up. They lift the rug up,
right.
sweep the dirt up under the rug, right?
That's right.
The rug back down. So everything looks good on the outside, but it's all dirty up underneath, right?
That's right.
So, as a man, when you take that time to sit down with yourself, I commend that. I do, because, like, for women, we have support, groups, and we have
Exactly.
lady self-love. You see that a lot. You see it. I don't see it a whole lot, for men, So yeah, I commend you for doing that. That's that inner work. That's that healing.
Exactly. It takes
Mhm.
time and it takes a sense of willing to be alone because a lot of times people don't want to be alone, and I get it. But sometimes, in order to truly sort out your feelings, you have to be alone with yourself.
Mhm.
And one of the things you're definitely right about, a lot of times, is the relationship between women women and men. You all, I will say, you're able to sit down with your girlfriends and
Mhm.
talk things out and get into your feelings and work it out. But men, we just, again, we are just not socialized that way. And I mean, I'm not saying that we should, commune as women, but
Right.
we don't have the, we, we need to have a better relationship where our men who are not experienced certain tough things or have been through certain tough things
Mhm.
are able to recognize it in a brother and be able to say, hey, man, let me talk to you, and be able to pull that brother aside and talk to him in a meaningful way that can help this guy get through what he's going through. Now,
Mhm.
some brothers have it, but it doesn't go too deep a lot of times
Mhm.
because we'll talk on the surface, but what pain is really embedded in us, sometimes we don't get into that with each other as men, and that's unfortunate,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, we're gonna get it. We're gonna get it together. We're gonna get it right. I am such an optimistic person. I am. And I just I love love. Like, I love love, and I just want everybody to be happy and just be in love. I do. I love love. I want you to be happy, to be in love. I just want everybody just to be happy and be in love. But we gotta love ourselves first. We gotta do that work,
that's the work.
inner work. Yep, that inner
Yep,
healing. We're gonna need that time alone
yep.
to figure some things out. And stop pointing the fingers and saying it's everybody else's fault. Because true enough, you may have had an absent parent. Your mom might have been there, your dad might not have been there. But after you get a certain age, as time goes on, you can't keep the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, will not allow you to keep blaming your parents, um, for your faults.
Right. Yep.
They're not going to let you do that anymore, because you're going to have to take responsibility and be accountable for your actions. You won't be able to blame them anymore, So, um, yeah. So I
Yep.
do believe that, once you do that inner work, once you take that time to yourself, I think that it'll change. I know that it'll change your life.
The
So,
best way to start that inner work is, again, not only just having time to yourself, but you have to do like I did. I began to ask myself a very important question when I started to go through a hard time. I asked myself, what's wrong? And that question began to make me begin to go in myself and look and say, where did everything get messed up? How did everything get messed up? And when you start asking those questions, believe me, they're all going to lead you somewhere. And the longer you do it, the more you're going to find out about yourself, and the more you're going to displace a lot of the emotions that haven't been dealt with. It's like a closet. You can throw so much stuff into a closet, after a while, you ain't going to be able to fit nothing else in there. One day you're going to open that door and everything's going to fall on you. So that's the same thing with who we are here and who we are here. You can't just keep taking trauma and trauma and trauma and disappointment and all of these things and keep loading them up in your spirit, and eventually don't deal with it, because it's going to catch up with you no matter what. So we have to learn how to unload these feelings that we're feeling and find out what are we truly feeling, because that's the only way you're going to be able to clean house in here and in here.
right. And so we need to get this done, get this taken care of before we say I do, right? So that way we won't be having to
Absolutely.
get divorced. Right?
Absolutely. You don't want to bring that into an I do.
Yes. Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring this show to a close. I missed you, Kevin. I
I
enjoyed
miss you
this
too.
conversation, and I hope that
Absolutely.
everyone in the audience enjoyed it as well. I got some good nuggets from it, and I love to hear a man's perspective when it comes to everything. Me, I really do, and especially when it comes to you know, the the dad side of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, is there anything you want to leave us with before we go?
Uh, I love you guys and I missed you. So be glad to see when we're all back together.
Yes, and I love you, and I love you, ladies and gentlemen. And I do want to say Happy Father's Day to all the dads, all the uncles, god dads, grandpas, all of you amazing men. Happy Father's Day.
All right.
I love you. And remember, just like the sun, you are necessary.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye.